everyone, and welcome to WPLS Live. We are thrilled that you are joining us tonight for a special session for us to be talking about growing empathy, creating connection in a disconnected world. We are happy to have back with us Sarah Proemsey. Sarah Proemsey is a licensed professional clinical counselor. She has spoken with us on a couple of occasions before in our community last school year, and we're so happy to have you back, Sarah. Sarah, some of you may know her from having heard from her last year, but she really has a passion and a heart for families. She herself is a mom and a wife. She has two twin daughters who are in 7th grade and a son in 4th grade. So again, she is living it with you and having the same empathy for you as you are raising your kids as well. And so I'm going to pray for Sarah as we begin tonight, and as we listen to her, we're going to pray that we can just have open ears and also hearts to hear what she has to say. Let's pray. Our great God, we thank you that you are a God who knows us. We are thankful that we have Jesus, who has demonstrated the greatest empathy of all by walking in our shoes as a human, but yet still God, and understanding exactly all that we go through. Lord, as we discuss what it means to grow empathy in a world that is disconnected, and even ourselves being broken and fragile ourselves, I pray that you would help us to understand more about what it means to have empathy, that we have a Savior who is empathetic to us, and how we can extend that over into the lives of our children. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Sarah?
Well, amen. Okay, I'm going to share my slides here, share my screen. So if you could just bear with me for just a quick second. And, oh no, you guys, for some reason, I'm going to try again. But for some reason, the slides are not, my browser has blocked my screen. Click the screen icon. This did not happen 5 seconds ago when we just did all of the practice. Okay. Let me try again. Yeah, it's not showing my slides now. Okay, click the screen icon in your address bar to allow. Is that the screen? Colleen, can you help? Any? Let's see. For some reason, it's not wanting to let me share my slides. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I just got it. Thank you, though, for the backup. I don't know what changed there, but can you all see this? I'm hoping yes. And I'm going to get started here. Thank you for your patience. Okay, someone say no if you're not seeing a giant blackboard that says growing empathy. I am really excited to present to you today. This is such an important topic for all of us. We are just so disconnected these days. You know, we're busy on this side of COVID. We still haven't maybe found our groove. And the thing that I am hearing from everyone I work with in the community is a huge desire to feel belonging, to find connections, to create community. We are all hungry to have people to do life with together. And you know what? Your kids are the exact same way. And so tonight we're going to look at not only how to help your children to grow in empathy, but also how you can grow in empathy and create a stronger bond with you and your child and with your friends, maybe your partner, your spouse, your family at large. So I'm really excited to see what all we can learn together tonight. A little bit about myself. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor. I have been practicing therapy for about 16 years now. In the Bay Area, I love working with individuals, couples, families. I have some groups that I work with, but I also love partnering with churches and schools and just helping them to create communities that thrive. I also am the founder of Love Your Story Christian Counseling Services. This is a new business, a new group counseling practice here in California, filled with Christian counselors that see people of all faith or no faith backgrounds, but it's a safe place to go if you're looking for some support for yourself or your family and just needing that, safe, soft place to land as you deal with some of the stressors in our lives. So this is my family. We've got my husband, Jeremy. He is a pastor here in a church, Refuge Church in San Mateo. My beautiful twin daughters, Isabella and Sophia. They are identical twins. So if you're looking at their faces and thinking that they look very similar, you are right. They very much do. And then my son, Jace, is in 4th grade this year. And man, it has been an interesting change. We were talking pre-show here tonight and just about the differences in our kids as they go through the different age spans. And I'm excited to talk with you about that and how that impacts empathy building tonight. But this is my family. This is what I'm busy with all the time. And so I am right there with you guys. I am in the trenches. I totally understand the stressors that we have of, working and raising kids and building a marriage and just trying to, show up and have friends, right? A social life and show up the best way we can every day. So what does this look like for building empathy? I think the first question we have to define is, what is empathy? And so we get confused sometimes with empathy versus sympathy or empathy versus compassion. But empathy truly is understanding and sharing the feelings of another person. And so there are a couple different parts to this. We've got the ability to emotionally understand what other people feel, right? To see things from their point of view and to imagine yourself in their place. All right, everybody pause for just a second. I want you to think of a time today or yesterday when you were with your children and you had this opportunity, right, to practice empathy with your child, where you could pause and try to emotionally understand what they're going through, right? Where you could see things from their point of view and imagine yourself in their place. And I want you to just pause and ask yourself, did I practice this? Just naturally, did I practice empathy with my child? And I want you just by yourself, no one's going to see your answers, but rate your empathy skills from 1 to 10, 10 being the best. So I'll give you a second. How often and how well do you naturally practice empathy? Now, here's the bottom line. I love that we started tonight talking about Jesus as the great example of empathy. He literally is God with us, Emmanuel, right? So he came down and he lived the life we live. And so he understands what it's like to be human. And we are not Jesus. So, I get that. I hope you get that, right? We do not naturally have all of these amazing skills that he has. But I think what's really awesome is that empathy skills can actually be learned. These are things we can practice. We don't have to judge ourselves. Maybe you gave yourself a 1 and you were like, oh no, I did not care about their point of view at all. I really just needed to get dinner on the table and I'm really mad at them. And I don't want to talk about my empathy. I want to talk about their empathy. If that's you tonight, I want you to know it's okay. We have all been there. There's so much grace in parenting. And the beautiful thing is that every moment is a fresh start. Every chance, every opportunity we engage with our kids is an opportunity to teach them about forgiveness too, forgiving us, right? But also to start over. Our kids are at a beautiful age. I know, kindergarten through 8th grade here tonight. Some of you might have older kids too, but within this K through 8 time, they really are like wet cement. There's a lot of flexibility, even just in their brain functioning. There's a lot of chance for them to learn new the next time, right? So tonight, I want you all to just take a deep breath with me. Ready? In and out. Because I know some of you did not do that. We're going to try it one more time. Everybody, take a deep breath in and out. And I want you to say out loud with me, I can learn empathy. Okay? So moving forward from that place of grace, let's understand a little bit more about the why. So UC Berkeley, I like that they're a local school here. They did some research on this. This actually is a very worldwide, well-researched topic, but we'll stick with their research project because it's fun that they're kind of in our backyard here. But they learned that because empathy helps students understand the perspectives, needs, and intentions of others, it is a building block of morality, and a key ingredient of successful relationships in school and beyond. And so we have this idea, right, that empathy is really understanding someone else's viewpoint, someone else's feelings. And so that idea and that ability to imagine and understand others' feelings, right, is called cognitive empathy or perspective taking. And that's what we're talking about tonight. There is another part to empathy. And some of you maybe gave yourself a 10. You're like, oh no, I am way too empathetic. I feel my kids' feelings all day, every day. I wonder if I even feel my own feelings anymore. You guys are what we would call empaths, right? People who walk around with your heart on your sleeves and you just care so much for the people around you. You have natural high emotional intelligence. You're able to actually feel the feelings in the room. So what we would call that, the capacity to sense others' feelings and experiences and to experience their feelings, right, that mirror their feelings, that is called emotional or affective empathy, right? And so that is a really cool superpower. If you have that, or if you notice that in your kids, like foster that. We also want to learn how to turn that off. It really kind of is hard to go around feeling everyone else's feelings all the time. We want to kind of create an internal compass where we know how to access our own emotions. But one of my twins has this ability, and she plays a game with her other 7th grade friends where they will ask her, okay, Sophia, what am I feeling right now? And she like gets it right every single time. And the reason is, we're going to get into this brain science, but we've discovered in the forefront of our brains, this prefrontal cortex, you guys are going to have to bear with me. I am a huge brain science nerd. I'm going to teach you some of that tonight. But what researchers have found is that in this front part of our brain, we actually carry the ability to map other people and like their personalities, all about them in our own brain. So even as I'm talking to you right now, your brain is working hard to map, okay, who is this person, right? Like, okay, she likes science, you know, she's got kids, she's a woman. I mean, there's all these things, right, that our brains are taking in information in order to build connections and to connect with me and what I'm saying. And it's a beautiful thing that happens, especially with the mirror neurons in our brains. What that does, those are wonderful for learning languages, for kids kind of mirroring and following their parents' example. It's a way that society passes down tradition. It's wonderful, but also it can sync us up together in a way that creates this really powerful, beautiful connection with our kids, with our friends, with our family, our spouses. It's amazing that God like wired our brains to be able to do this. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that today and why that is an important part of empathy and relationship building. So here is another thing from the research at UC Berkeley, the empathy outcomes. I know when we're talking about the school setting, we really want to understand, you know, why does West Portal Lutheran School care so much about social emotional health? And this is why. When we have social emotional intelligence, we have kind and helpful behavior from our kids, right? We've learned, studies have shown that more empathetic children are more likely to show pro-social behavior, such as sharing, helping, and comforting others. It's huge. Think about what that would be like in your family if you all knew how to do that together, right? If we created environments in our homes where we share well, we help out, and we comfort each other, you know, this is such a huge part of academic success in the school, in the classroom too. When kids feel that they are a part of that community, it creates, point two, a safer school culture, right? So the study shows that increased empathy can decrease bullying and aggression among kids and make them kinder and more inclusive towards classmates. It's huge. And then the third outcome that the studies keep pointing to is that empathy fosters positive student relationships. So children who show more empathy are more popular in class, have better relationships with their teachers, they're more engaged in school, have higher GPAs, and eventually greater success in college, along with studies show people with higher EQs are more likely to do well in their career, get hired for the job, all kinds of beautiful benefits to their well-being overall. And then also, as we build up empathy, not just for our students, but for our teachers, for you as a parent, the outcomes that we're seeing is that when we as the adults in these kids' lives practice and builds up our empathy skills, it allows the caregivers to understand students' perspectives, read their nonverbal signs, and react with concern to students needing help. We're able to create belonging. And I love this quote by Henry David Thoreau. Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eye for an instant? It feels impossible to be able to slow down enough to take someone else's point of view. Sometimes we get so busy or we're so stressed, it feels really hard to do this. And the reason it's hard is because we are actually physically changing our brains, like the physical matter, the actual neurohighways in our brains. We are doing hard work when we practice empathy. So it is actually physically taxing, and yet it's so worth it because the rewards that come back to us when we pour into another this way are tenfold, right? There's a scripture I love in the Bible. It says, "He who waters will himself be watered." And there is so much truth in that. I've seen that in my life. I think if you could just pause for a second, when have you seen that true in your life? When you've given to somebody else and then you received even more than what you poured out. I think those moments are what life is all about, right? Okay. So we need empathy to connect with others. The ability to mentally and emotionally put yourself in the shoes of another person helps others feel heard, validated, and respected. A lack of empathy, on the other hand, conveys apathy, disinterest, and condescension. It does not facilitate productive communication and can be detrimental, even toxic, to our personal relationships. Let's pause for a second. That one might hurt a little bit, but think about that. When did you need empathy and didn't receive it? Can you think of a time, maybe at work, maybe at home, where you really needed someone to just see what you were experiencing, right? To offer that comfort so that you felt heard, validated, respected, right? But what happens when you didn't get that? I think our kids feel that a lot. I think that sometimes as parents, we like to minimize their emotions and we like to act like they're not like real or that important because maybe they're like crying because their toy fell on the floor or something when you're dealing with very young kids. And we're like, oh my goodness, I just like really need you to put your shoes on and like tie them because we're already late to school, you know? And I think we can create this culture of like, okay, your feelings are not that important to me. What's important is getting things done. And there really isn't this room for like efficiency in parenting. And oh gosh, I know a lot of you might be like, what? You know, I need that, you know, and I hear you if that is you. But if you really think about it, what our children need is to be heard and seen. And I think there are ways we can still get to school on time while like validating and hearing what is underneath the crying. Why are they sad, right? So I'll tell you a story personally, a time I failed miserably, because I do all the time, you guys. I can teach this all day, every day, but actually practicing it every, like in my life, it's like going to the gym and lifting weights. Like I'm not always up for that. I'm not always good at that. But there was this moment I was sitting with my son. I don't remember exactly where we were. He was young. He was like 8, 7. And I was like, you know, but it's okay to cry. Like, it's okay to express your feelings. I was trying to teach him, but please stop yelling. Like, ow, it hurts my ears, but it's okay to cry. And his response to me was, oh, it is? I didn't know it was okay to cry. I didn't think you liked that. And I felt really horrible. Like, oh man. So I've been teaching my son like that his tears are not okay and that he needs to somehow like stuff them down inside himself instead of letting them out. And that is not healthy. Like crying is necessary. I want, especially man, I'm a therapist. Like crying is something that we find very important in the therapy room. I want my son to know that his tears matter to me, even if I'm late, you know? And so this is something we all struggle with. Again, coming back to that grace. I think that gave me an opportunity to tell him like, hey, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. That was an opportunity for me to practice empathy in that moment, right? Again, we always get fresh starts with our kids. So moving forward, Let's go to the brain science. This is so important because when you can understand how your body works, you can understand how to like have power over your body. Anybody else here ever feel like your body does things you don't want it to? I mean, I can't see you at all, so I don't know if you're raising your hand, but I imagine because you're human too, that there are moments that you lose your temper or that you just kind of freak out and have panic, you know? There are times when our bodies just take over. However, when we really understand our brains and why our bodies function the way that they do, we then can be empowered to make different choices. It's pretty cool. So, first up, with Brain Science Spotlight, there are 3 elements to relational communication. Okay, so we've got number 1, a big part of relational communication is sensing what is going on between you and another person, right? I'm feeling what it's like in the room. I'm noticing what is happening between us. Maybe just even think like bring to mind a time that you had a conversation with a human being today. I hope all of us have had one of those. If you haven't, I'm sorry, like reach out right after this call and connect with a human being. But think of a time recently when you have had a conversation. And this is a part of it, right? We're sensing what is going on between us. The second part of the communication is being in touch with what's going on inside you. Like that is what we call insight. When I can have the ability to be aware of my own emotions, my own physical state, like, am I hungry? That might impact how I communicate with you. Or am I feeling angry by what is being said? Or am I feeling like vibes, right? Like, those moments you just really get good vibes with a person. I was just talking, pre-show here about having middle schoolers and how sometimes they just don't want to talk to you anymore. And you're like, okay, we're just going to be quiet in the car now. Okay. It's a big shift maybe. But recognizing that, those vibes are sometimes very like closed between you and the other person. And you got to notice, what is that doing to me? Am I sad about this? How do I feel about this? Right. And keeping that in. And then also the times that your kid opens up to you and they're sharing information and then those good vibes flowing when your brain is syncing with their brain and you're like, yay, there's my kid again, but being in touch with that insight, your own internal processes is an important part of relational communication. And then number 3, the third part is sensing what is going on in another person, which is empathy. Right. And so we want to practice all 3 of these things. And what is really cool is that this is happening without you even knowing it. Your brain is doing all of this, even without your awareness. The more that you practice awareness of this process, the more you build up your ability to have insight, as in step 2, and the stronger your connection with people can be. This might be something, some of you are starting from square one. I know we have a lot of families in the Bay Area that did not ever talk about feelings. That might be some of you. Maybe your parents were like, emotions were not a thing. Like you didn't even like talk about them at all. I know, especially in this area, I work with a lot of adults who maybe they are first generation immigrants, or maybe their parents were first generation immigrants. And what that has been like for them, there was one of my clients, she shared with me, she says, I don't even know how to say the word trauma in Chinese. Like, I don't know how to have this conversation with my mom. And she really wanted to build that emotional connection, but it was very difficult to do that with a generation that didn't acknowledge insight, right? That's okay. Like we all can start from our own unique starting point. And what's beautiful is that that's actually a hugely powerful story. The immigration story and all that goes in there is so courageous. There's so many different levels of feelings that even though maybe there hasn't been words around that, it doesn't mean that you can't still find connection moving forward. The more that you learn how to do this, the better even your toughest relationships will be. And so I want to encourage you in that way, because this is just the way the human brain works. Whether people want to acknowledge it, whether they have insight or no insight, right? Whether they have empathy or no empathy, the brain is still working in these 3 steps every time we have communication together. And so we want to build up our ability to be in control of that, right? And to be able to practice it the way that feels really good to us and builds those strong relationships we're looking for. So this is where it gets interesting for me, because I love to teach people, okay, how do I do this? What are my steps, right? And I want you to look at this image of the brain. That, I mean, it's kind of a cartoony image, but it's the best I can do. I think that that is a really interesting depiction of the human brain, because what it highlights is all those pathways, those wrinkles. So all of those things are neural highways or neural pathways. And those are the avenues that our thoughts go down. So without you even meaning to, I mean, most of us don't know what we're thinking about at any given moment, but we actually can practice that insight skill to be aware of our own patterns of thinking. But even if you're not, ever since the womb, your brain started developing neural highways that kind of shaped how you see the world, right? You learned what people are for. You learned your colors, your languages, your academics, but you also learned how to get what you need, how to connect with people, what not to do in relationships. Everybody's had their own unique experience based on their own family story. And so some of those neural pathways are ones we don't really want anymore. They don't actually work for us as adults anymore. But we don't know how to stop doing those things, right? And so as we build that insight piece, we're able to gain control to actually notice the thought, the pathway, to stop and say, okay, hold up. I actually don't want to yell right now. Take a deep breath, right? Calm the body. Well, what do I want to do? I actually want to just like take a break and like go get a drink of water and just like clear my head for a quick sec. Okay, let's go do that. Right? And then re-engage when you feel more connected and more yourself. And so this is what we call the cognitive triangle, right? It's this kind of pattern of having our thoughts, which, the neural pathways, everything, flies down those highways. We have our behaviors, what we do on the outside, how we use our bodies, what we do with the thoughts, right? And our feelings. The feelings, which we're going to get into in just a second, are the things most people want to change. That's where we carry our pain. And I want you to know this, because this is what's happening with your kids too. When my child is like laying on the floor crying, which happens actually in my home quite a bit still at 9 years old, but laying on the floor crying, not putting their shoes on to go to school, like he's having feelings, he's having pain. And to me, I have a choice. I could either see that behavior and be angry, my own feelings, that it's not going my way, my thoughts. Oh my gosh, we're going to be late. Like, oh, I'm always late. What is going to happen? Like, blah, 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 blah. Does this mean I'm a bad mother? Like, I mean, there's just a million thoughts. Like, is he going to be late until he's 53? Like, is he going to live at home forever because he can't tie his shoes? I mean, come on, you guys, we've all had extreme thoughts, right? But we've got the thoughts, we've got the anger, then if we let that control our behavior, we're going to have conflict with our kid. However, if we pause and we notice, okay, I'm having these thoughts, I'm having these feelings, I'm going to build up my insight. I'm going to pause and I'm going to notice that my kid is also having thoughts and feelings, and maybe I don't really know what they are. I might try giving him a hug. I might try saying, hey, why don't you want to put your shoes on? Do you not want to go to school? Why not? What makes you not want to go to school? Right? And those are awesome conversations to be able to have with their teacher, with the principal, so that they can support your child and make going to school a little bit easier. Because I promise you, your child is not the only one having a hard time with these things. They have supports in place to be able to actually help your family, your children, right? You to be able to respond to whatever the need is that is causing the misbehavior, right? So misbehavior is the child trying to meet the need in a way that is just missing the mark, right? It's not actually going to meet his needs if he lays on the floor and cries. But that's all he's got right now. He needs us to teach him other ways of handling those feelings so that he can build insight, right? So when we practice empathy, we teach our children to gain and practice insight building. We teach them how to be healthy individuals. This is really hard to do, and you might need some support. And this is what therapists are for. And so if you do want some support, some guidance in this, I have some books at the end of the talk, but I also would love for you to consider, maybe going to some therapy and trying to help your child understand how to communicate these things in a different way. But moving forward, one thing that I would love for you all to do is to hold up your hand like this. Those of you who came last year, this is your brain. This is not the actual size of your brain. Many people have asked me that. No, your brain is much larger, but this is, for our purposes, how your brain looks on the inside. So everybody hold up your hand. Again, I won't know if you're doing it, but I'm just going to assume that you actually want to learn. So do this so you can learn. Hold up your hand like this. And I want you to realize this part of your brain, this front part, is this prefrontal cortex. Okay, so this is where all of the good decisions are made, judgment, problem solving, empathy, connection, right? Where we sync up with other people. That piece of your brain is not fully developed until around age 25. Your kids have a long way to grow. I promise you, the behaviors that you are like fed up with up to here now are not going to be those same behaviors when they are like 18. Like my son is not going to be laying on the floor crying about tying his shoes at 18 years old, right? He will grow. His brain will develop. Interestingly, a lot of this part of the brain, so this part isn't really fully developed. It is growing a ton between the ages 14 through 18, then 25. But a lot of this brain actually grows until about age 11, 10, 11, 12, and then it like sloughs off. So if you feel like your kid has a change in just demeanor, behavior right around that time, it's not hormones. I mean, hormones are happening too, but what's really the cause of the difference in the change is that they have lost a significant amount of their brain at that time. No kidding. Like that is real. There is science to prove that. The reason that happens, which is pretty fascinating, is because it makes room for the most significant brain development like time in their whole lives. I think the only other time the brain grows that rapidly is, that birth to 2 or birth to 3, where they're learning so many new things all at once. So we actually have these kids who in some ways are functioning like toddlers for a little bit, and they need that much support. But it's almost like, how like when you take your kids to the pool and they might be really nervous to swim in the deep end. And so they like cling to the wall or like roller skating or ice skating, but then they get brave, and they like go off a little bit and then they come back and they hold on and then like, okay, I can do this. And they go explore and then they come back and hold on. That is what the middle years feel like. 8 through about 12, 13, kids are exploring, like with holding on to mom and dad, those childlike behaviors, and then pushing off to go and like explore and be brave and find themselves and then come back, and like, okay, I'm going to act like a baby. I'm going to regress a little bit. And what they need from us is just so much empathy because they are going through a tremendous amount of change during this time. So your brain, hold it up again. Maybe you put your arm down. It's okay. I went off tangent. Hold it up again. So this part is your prefrontal cortex. This part is this top part of your brain responsible for like thinking and language, communicating, problem solving, all of that, right? Right there. The really important stuff is what separates us from the rest of the animals on the planet. You come down here, you've got your amygdala, which is right here, which is responsible for your emotion responses. That triggers like a smoke detector. When it feels like you're in danger, it's going to say danger, danger. Right, to your hypothalamus. You learn big words. You can say hypothalamus now. It triggers a message, right? And so as soon as that amygdala, very base brain, very like reptile, like very primal, like instinct, like based in attachment, childhood, right? When that part feels threatened or scared, it's going to send that message up to your hypothalamus and you are going to flip your lid. This can happen when your child is crying on the floor. That, I think, is why we don't offer empathy. I don't think it's because we're like, oh, I don't love my child right now. I think what is happening is our brains, our amygdala is signaling danger and we kind of lose it, right? And we disconnect from all this beautiful, good stuff that helps us solve our problems and have empathy. And we just have fear and anger and pain, right? And so we have to recognize this cycle that can happen with our parenting, also in our relationships. When we have our prefrontal cortex engaged, we are capable of calm, rational thought, mental flexibility, right? Being able to go with the flow, plans changing, able to make good decisions. However, as soon as this amygdala is engaged, boom, big emotions arise. We have anger, fear, anxiety, sadness. We're unable to make good decisions or calm down. So if we, as the adults, cannot calm down, how are we going to help our children calm down? Do you remember the whole thing with the oxygen mask on the airplane, right? You have to take care of you first. So that's when those deep breaths and grace come in. You are just a human being. You have your own relational trauma, right? When we have pain from the past, that is called relational trauma. So even if you weren't physically abused or sexually abused, right, or verbally abused, you still have relational trauma because you were brought up on this hurting planet, right? You were raised by imperfect people and you are an imperfect person. And so we have to recognize like it is okay to have needs, even as adults, even as parents, even as mothers. It is okay to meet your needs. And sometimes the best thing you can do is turn around, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that both of you are just human beings, right? You can give yourself a hug. Sometimes giving your kid a hug feels good to you, and help yourself just to remember it is okay to not be perfect, right? It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to be triggered. But we got to come back down and find that sense of calm before we can engage in the problem solving. One way that we can know that our lid is flipped, because sometimes we don't know, and I'm going to fly through this part a little bit quickly. If we want more information about this, you can definitely email me. I'm happy to share these slides. I know Principal has these slides too, but these are the responses that our amygdala triggers in us. There are 4 basic trauma responses in the human world. We either find fight, where when we're triggered, we get tempered, right? And angry outbursts. We get aggressive, dominating and controlling. We demand perfection, our own, like we want it our way, right? Which is not what we want to teach our children. This does not work in parenting. Like it just creates conflict all the time. We want to pursue power and control, impulsive decision making. We get bullying, criticizing, raging. And I think that feels like bad to us. That's not our heart. That's not who we want to be, but it's what kind of takes over, that flood that you can feel come up from your gut and like rush through you, that heat that comes. Your body is saying, I am not okay. I do not want to be in this situation. I feel threatened, almost like if there's a tiger, like a saber-toothed tiger back in the caveman days coming at me, I'm going to take that tiger out. But the problem is your child is not a tiger. And I have 2 almost teenage girls. Like, I get it. I get having trauma response and feeling like they might be saber-toothed tigers. We have lots of bubble baths in our house. I will just tell you, it's one of the 3 of us. Like, let's just go, like, calm down, take a shower, let's breathe, pour into yourself. But fight is one of those ways that you can feel that amygdala is engaged, that I am not okay. I need to calm down. We also have flight, which can be feelings of panic and anxiety. We could be turning to work, becoming a workaholic, obsessive and or compulsive behaviors, always on the go, staying busy, right? Over worrying, perfectionist, an overachiever, hyperactive even, and over analytical. Another way that our bodies can respond to trauma is freezing. And that can look like depression, dissociation, having a hard time getting up, right? Brain fog, avoiding human contact, feeling detached, struggling with making decisions, hibernating, feeling lifeless or dead inside, feeling spaced out, isolated. And then this last one is a fairly new one that researchers have noticed. It's called fawning, but basically it's a different way that our body kind of takes over when that amygdala is triggered and we flip our lid. We all of a sudden feel like we have to please people to stay safe. And so this is almost the opposite of fight. Like I'm trying to take care of you, right? And so that's going to be people pleasing, codependency. This person would have a hard time standing up for themselves or saying no, having a lack of boundaries, deferring to others in decision making. Oh, you decide, I'm good with whatever, right? Avoiding conflict, highly concerned with fitting in. And so the truth is, all of us do one or more of these things because we all have had relational trauma. I think what's hard is that the amygdala doesn't get it right. It's like I tell this story of We have a smoke detector in my kitchen. And so every time we make sausage, that thing goes off and we get so mad. We're like, oh, it's just smoke. Like, stop beeping at us, right? And sometimes I feel like we want to say that to our amygdala too. Like, hey, there is no fire. Like, no one is coming to kill me. Like, this is really okay. I am safe. You know, we want to tell our bodies, hey, brain, it's just smoke. It's just a teenage girl. It's okay. I will survive this, right? Or, oh, here's one. It's just a PTA meeting. I feel like all of the people I know that serve with me in PTA, I think we are all having these things come up, which is really interesting. And I have lots of thoughts about that. We're going to move on. The other thing is, I think that your kids have these experiences, right? And so you can kind of notice, like, okay, I think they're having a trauma response right now. And you might be the perfect parents, you guys. You guys might be absolutely wonderful, but they're still in relationships with other kids, and friends can cause trauma, right? And you can't protect your kids from this. It's a part of life. The best thing to do is to teach them what to do when this happens, how to self-soothe, how to believe in themselves, right? How to practice building insight and empathy, and how to build those strong connections together. If you have more questions about this and you want to dive deeper, my information will be at the end of the screen. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to see if there's any way that I can help you. If you feel like you're really stuck in one of these patterns, sometimes it takes talking to a professional to help get out of the loop, right? So we're here for you. Okay. Building empathy skills, and this is near the end here, and then we will open it up for questions in a couple of minutes. But these are some ways. I always get parents saying, okay, well, what do I do now? You know, I just talked to you about your trauma. Likely you're feeling a little vulnerable. Maybe you're feeling one of those trauma responses. Take that deep breath. Remember, Grace, that you are 100% safe to be a human being. You are not screwing up your kids. There's so much hope, and you're going to be okay, right? We can start practicing today. So here are some ways that you can teach your kids, maybe even screenshot this and like to help you to jog your memory. But you can teach your kids these skills. And I wrote them, and actually my AI assistant helped me write these out, which was super fun to use. But I wrote them in a way that I think is kid language, just to help like make it make sense. So the first thing, we want to unlock your inner wisdom. That is insight building. Get connected with your own internal compass. What am I feeling? You guys, we take so much information from the neck up. Like, we just want to know our thoughts, right? We think so much. We are a culture that is obsessed with knowledge, which is great. I like knowledge. Again, big nerd. But your body, the whole like other 90% of your body, has a ton of information to give you and wisdom to give you about your situations that you're in. God wired you to have emotions. Emotions are safe. They are not scary. Behaviors are scary, but emotions are just emotions. And honestly, you guys, God has emotions. You can see that in the book of John. Jesus was a very emotional person, you know, and just kind of watching his story, like, he did not hide it. I love that about him, that he was a brave like man willing to show his feelings to the world around him. I think that that's how people can know us, is by being honest about how we feel about something, right? And so connecting with that, right? The emotions that come up for you are just there to show you how you're experiencing the world around you. It's almost like if you were a car, your feelings, your emotions are like lights on your dashboard saying, oh, you need more gas. Like for me, I always get really sad when I'm tired. I never notice when I'm tired, probably because I've had twins and I just like stay in that like twin mode ever since they were born, you know? But I don't notice that I'm tired. What I notice is my thoughts start getting really negative. Like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst. I can never do this. You know, life is hard. And I get pictures of hiding under my covers, and it just sounds so good. I usually am able to say, oh, I think I might be tired, and that's why I'm thinking this negatively. You know, that was a feeling that came up that's telling me, hey, you have a need. You know, so we also have like, hey, check your engine. Something might be broken or in pain, right? Or, hey, like you need to, I don't know, eat food or go for a walk or exercise, right? So those things are really important to just access the 90% of our body, really check in and unlock your inner wisdom. What is your felt experience? The next one, master the art of active listening. So this means pay attention to the person who's talking with your whole body, right? Hearing happens in the ears, listening with the whole body and mind. Maybe write that one down because I'd love for you to teach your kids this. Hearing happens in the ears, listening happens with the whole body and mind, right? One more time. Hearing happens with the ears, listening happens with the whole body and mind. That means we want to maintain eye contact. We want to nod, smile, right? We might even reflect back. Okay, I'm hearing you say this and this and this. Do you know how often when I do that, I've gotten it wrong about what I thought they were saying? Such an important step. Giving them a chance to clarify, right? So master the art of active listening. Stay curious is the next one. Get rid of judgment. Say no to judgment. If you are entering into a situation judging it, then you're not going to learn what is actually happening, right? Judgment keeps you from learning. And so we want to stay curious about our relationships, about our people, right? About their experiences. We want to ask questions, even with your middle schoolers who don't like that you're asking questions. It doesn't mean that you should stop doing it. They actually still need you to be involved. But stay curious, show them that empathy. No, pay attention to your brain telling you, I think I'm crossing a boundary though. Maybe, watch that as your kids get older. They do come back though. I was in youth ministry for a long time. So I worked with kids ages 11 through 25, and right around age 22, every year I get a handful of kids like coming back being like, I'm so sorry. I was a handful for you. Like, thank you for all you did to pour into us. And even the parents would say like, oh my gosh, my son just sent me this card thanking me for being his mom. And it's right around that 21, 22, 23 mark that something must happen in their brain development when they're like, oh, I actually want to be friends with my parents again. Just hang in there, you guys. Pour into it now, because he who waters will himself be watered. And it might take 20 years, but it's so worth it for the lifetime of a healthy relationship with your kid. Okay, unearth shared style. That was the AI's way of saying find common ground, right? Find the shared style that you have together. Embrace your vulnerability and rock it like a boss. That one was cute. And then give your brain some love. So your brain is 73% water. You need to be sleeping. You need to be hydrating. If you want to know exactly how much water or like herbal tea, not caffeinated, but herbal tea to drink a day, you need like half your body weight in ounces. That's how much you need every day to make sure you're maintaining cognitive functioning, make sure you're stabilizing your mood, and you're able to show up. Our kids don't drink that much. I wish my kid drank that much. It's not, I mean, it's important that they drink water, but I think it's even more important the older that we get, right? So keeping that in mind, healthy fruits and vegetables, especially those green fruits and berries, really help the cellular growth in brains. And so we want to give our brains some love. Regular sleep-wake schedules, getting outside with that vitamin D. I mean, putting your bare feet in the grass or going for a walk in the sunshine for 30 minutes is like really a great mood booster. Like I have seen clinical anxiety like managed so well with just that one simple step is taking a walk in the sunshine or rain, doesn't matter, but every day. So that is about it. To conclude, I just want us to kind of land on this point that empathy is the powerful ingredient that forms the basis of any healthy bond. And this last quote, never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have. For more information, I'll leave this slide up for just a minute so you can screenshot this or write down the names of these books. But these are books that are based in brain science and understanding how to connect with your kid in ways that engage attachment, engage cognitive functioning, help you learn what is happening in their brains. So Dr. Daniel Siegel is a leader in neuroscience. He wrote The Whole Brain Child and Parenting from the Inside Out. I love that, how a deeper self-understanding can help you raise children who thrive. And that's all we want, right? He just came out with a new one that I am reading right now. And the first part is super boring if you can get past that, but it's still like chock full of great information. Actually, this one is one I'd recommend for all of your teachers too, who work with adolescents. So the 7th, 8th grade teachers, I think that it would really fuel their work that they do too. But Brainstorm by Dr. Siegel is the power and purpose of the teenage brain. It is amazing. It debunks a ton of myths about teenagers and helps them. I mean, this is such an important part of life for them. This is when they have all the energy and the creativity that they actually can cause a lot of great world change. And then the last one, How We Love Our Kids, 5 Love Styles of Parenting, is really helpful in understanding your own attachment models and your own childhood and how you can use the parts that you love to honor your family, right? And to cover the parts that you don't want to pass down to your kids. So really helpful resources. And of course, I've got my current website, sarahproemsey.com, and my email, hello@sarahproemsey.com. And then my group practice, Love Your Story, Christian Counseling Centers. That website will be live in December. I've got a great team of quality therapists that I have been interviewing all week. It's a super fun time as this new ministry gets started. So that is all that I have for you guys today. I'd love at this point to open it up to any questions. I don't know how to see if there are any questions. I'm so bad at the technology. I am a sit face-to-face kind of gal, right? Like, let's talk.
Thank you, Sarah, so much for sharing with us. I love that you shared with us the why, about why we are really building within our families and especially our kids, what it means to be empathetic. And so a lot of valuable insights, I think, came from what you shared with us. I have a lot of questions myself. I see a lot in the chat here. It's on our YouTube live stream. Just a lot of thank yous. I'm sure it was insightful that they're going to digest with their whole bodies what you just shared. One question I had was, so you talked a lot about how us as parents or as adults in these children's lives, about how we can engage them deeper in understanding more about themselves and in relationship to others. But when it comes times where they lack empathy and we're trying to correct something, how do we best do that? Something we thought of was having empathy coaches within our own student population. But I'm curious to see what strategies that might be employed when there is something that happens where there was a lack of empathy and then we want to correct it with them.
So great question. I think for most kids, if you ask them, how did that make you feel? Or they may not have emotion words. Honestly, most of the adults I work with do not know words for feelings. They might know like angry, which no one is ever angry, apparently, because adults don't like to talk about anger very often. It takes a while. I'm like, hey, I think you're mad. They're like, no, I wouldn't say I'm mad. I feel more frustrated or upset, right? And I'm like, no, you're mad. Like, that's mad, right? But they know angry, scared, and hurt, right? And I think for kids, if we can look at them and say, hey, it looks like you're feeling really mad right now, we're modeling that, right? And so our ability to connect with their brains actually helps them to build those empathy skills. So even if they don't have it yet, like us saying, I think that might have made you really mad. And that might be why you hit, but we can't hit. What's a better way to show that you're angry in the future? Or what happened that made you hit your sister or hit your friend, right? Like, I know you don't want to hit, like, what is it that made you feel that way? So we're actually engaging in the empathy conversation in a way that brings out, and so then they feel how good it feels to be heard and supported, that they remember that and their brains develop those neuro highways, and that's where their thoughts go next time. Not necessarily for their own behavior. They'll probably hit again next time, honestly. But when they see someone else hit, they get to step in and say, oh, are you mad? I'm sorry. Like, maybe I did something or maybe they did something and I can support you a little bit better. Raising a child takes years, right? Like, behaviors don't just stop. We have to really practice the messaging a lot of times. Now, when we have kids like my son has ADHD. Empathy is so hard on him. He is a very, and some of you parents might relate to this in a child that you have, or also this is you, where feelings are like, I don't get them. He is a logical thinker. Like, this child is straightforward. He does not like how I use words creatively, I'll say, fluidly. I change definitions quite frequently to fit what I'm trying to say. He hates that. So he doesn't get it when people are mad at him. He's like, I have no idea what I did. And so I'll say, like, ooh, that hurt my feelings. And he gets mad, like, but why? I can't understand. I don't have the ability to understand your feelings. And so in that situation, they might need a little more support from someone who is trained to help kids who are neurodivergent, who have a harder time with empathy. And he is seeing a therapist and a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and this kid is thriving. He is a different boy this year than last year. His behaviors in the classroom have improved significantly. His fighting with his siblings have improved significantly. And even as a licensed therapist, I was not able to do that for him. He needed his own care team. And so I want you guys to hear me on that. Like, sometimes people need extra help. Does that make sense?
Oh, a lot of sense, Sarah. And I'm glad you were vulnerable enough to say that, that we all need a care team, and it takes a village. I know that's a cliche, but it truly does. And I just want to remind parents that this year we are partnering with Christian Counseling Center. We're able to have someone 2 days a week with us after school. And that's so valuable. And I can say that, just truly from hearing from some of the families who are benefiting from this. And we'd love to invite more of you to be a part of that too, or look into other resources. I know Sarah shared a bunch here with you tonight with some books. I wanted to end by just asking another practical question, Sarah. So one thing I learned recently, it wasn't a talk about empathy, but it just reminded me of, like, oh yeah, this is a very practical way to build empathy for us as teachers, to write down one thing that you learn about, one of your students each day. And then by the end of the year, you have, like, let's just say like 40 things that and it becomes, really specific about what you can affirm or acknowledge, in a particular individual. Is there something that kids can do? I know you mentioned listening. I was like, oh yeah, listening is a big one. Or even just looking someone in the eye, for kids, that actually builds empathy, because you can actually look at their facial expressions and understand more what's happening. But would you have any tips on some very practical things like that maybe our kids could practice on building some empathy between themselves and for their peers?
Yeah. I'll tell you, my son has had a great year. Yesterday was his first day he had behavioral issues in the classroom, and it was because he had a substitute, and he came home and told me lots of things. I will share with you the one thing. He said that the problem was that this teacher didn't know him like his normal teacher. And his normal teacher knows him so well that he has good behavior. And he couldn't understand it in his own mind more than that. But exactly what you're just saying, that when your teachers take time to write down things they learn, your students know that, like, they notice it. And so I think parents doing that too. Our kids change so much. So writing down the things that you're learning about them is really helpful. And then maybe having a board or something in the classroom or at home where kids can write down things they're learning about their friends, things they like about their friends. And that not only builds their friends' self-esteem, but it also helps practice empathy. Another thing for adults to practice, and this is a really silly one, but one great way to build empathy skills is to watch foreign films without the subtitles and see if you can figure out what's happening just by watching the facial expressions in the show. If you have older kids, you could do it as a family. And I think it's a lot of fun, to be able to see if you can figure out what the plot really is. Yeah.
That's great. I love that suggestion, Sarah. Very practical. Even if you're people watching, you can look from afar, see if you understand if that conversation is going positively or what the emotions are, not hearing.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just reminded me, we do that with the sea lions in San Francisco. We'll go and we'll make up whole stories of what's happening in the sea lion plot. And that is actually empathy building too, in a way, right? You're building stories based on sea lion watching instead of people watching. But yeah, those are great ideas.
Great. Well, I know there's probably more ideas out there that even you parents have, and even from our own students and our children. So we'd love to hear what those things are. This month, Sarah knows that we've been talking about kindness and empathy, and I'm realizing as well that empathy requires a lot of humility, and that piece about vulnerability as part of building empathy is important, because I think when that amygdala is flipped, and I always referred to that first session you had with us, Sarah, where you flip your lid, and I was like, okay, we cannot engage in this moment with our kids when this is happening, or ourselves. But just understanding that there can be these real genuine positive moments where we see uh, real gains made, like you shared about your son. And want to remind you parents again that we're in it for the long haul, and small little things at a time will definitely end up allowing us to see positive, healthy, and whole children, which is our vision at West Portal Lutheran. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and really want to thank Sarah again. I hope you get to visit our school at some point. I know you're busy with your family. You're not too far away, but I'm sure we'd love to see you in person. And I know there are others who would love to have you back again. But thank you for tonight. And thank you, parents, for listening. And this session is recorded, so all of you who are listening on recording, also thank you for listening as well. Thanks, everyone, and have a good evening.